We'll be talking specifically about the Battle of Hill 314 in Mortain, which is the town we're in right now, and also going about more deeper into the 30th Infantry Division, which was a division specifically responsible for defending this hill and ultimately the city itself, right? So, as Captain McGrath stated earlier, right, the Allies, American forces, they pushed in past St. Lo, right? We've come into Mortain, which Mortain specifically was occupied originally by the 1st Infantry Division, the city of Mortain, and they also were occupying defending this hill as well. The 30th Infantry Division comes in and to relieve the 1st Infantry Division so they can go into further operations into France, and they occupy Mortain and then Hill 314 as well. So a little bit about the 30th Infantry Division. They were originally a National Guard unit activated in World War I. They composed of the 117th, 118th, 119th, 120th Infantry Regiments. So these were units from both Carolinas and Tennessee. They fought in World War I and then were deactivated after that, and then they got reactivated in 1940 in response to Hitler attacking Poland. And they arrived in Normandy on 11th of June on Omaha Beach. So in response to the 30th Infantry Division taking Mortain, Hitler launched Operation Lutich, which was a counterattack kind of out of desperation, and also, if you know Hitler's personality, he gets pretty impatient. So this was kind of like a very last minute thing that he wanted to do to try to stop the Allies from further advancing into France. And so the counterattack composed of 4 panzer divisions, and it was launched on August 7th. Specifically moving to Hill 314. So the 30th Infantry Division, specifically the 120th, 1st and 2nd Battalion, were responsible for holding Mortain at 314. On Hill 314, there were about 700 soldiers, and one of the specifically we're going to go into is the role that the field artillery played into this. So attached with the 120th Infantry Regiment was the 230th Field Artillery Battalion, and they composed of, on the hill, they composed of 2 forward observation teams. For you guys who don't know what FOs, or forward observation teams, are, is they're people who radio to the artillery guns and tell them basically where to fire on the ground. So those 2 FO teams composed of Lieutenant Robert Weiss, who's right here, and then Lieutenant Bartz, and then Sergeant Frank Tanias. So these teams operated in 3 soldiers each. So on the hill, Lieutenant Weiss's team was to the east, so on that side, probably over there. They were overlooking road D157 and D487, so the road's basically coming this way. Lieutenant Bartz's team overlooked the west, right, so they were probably over here, and they were overlooking the west side and the north side towards Avranches, right? So, and Avranches is actually, it's that way, right? And remember, for Operation Lutich, that's where, that was one of the Germans' main objectives, was to go to that town. So what ended up happening, right, on August 7th, the counterattack was launched. Firefight started at around 0100, and the Panzer divisions were able to overtake Mortain and ended up surrounding all of Hill 314. So specifically the 1st SS and the 2nd SS were coming this way, and they were able to surround Hill 314, therefore trapping all of pretty much 2nd Battalion on this hill. And for basically the next 6 days, they had to do everything they got to defend the hill. What ended up helping the defense a lot was the 2 forward observation teams basically pre-planned fires. So if you guys don't know what TT Lodak is, essentially what that helped them with is pre-planning their fire coordinates. So whenever they got attacked specifically at night, the FOs could just radio to their artillery teams hey, we're getting attacked at this location with the code name specifically, so they wouldn't have to try to adjust their fire at night. They could just say that code name and then the guns be able to fire to that place. All right, so that was really helpful for defending the hill at nighttime. Focusing on Lieutenant Bartz's observation team. So when firefight started, Lieutenant Bartz didn't really exemplify good leadership, and he got really terrified and he crawled into his foxhole and basically hid there for the next 6 days. So he was pretty much ineffective in defending or in this operation. So Sergeant Frank Dinas ended up overtaking and basically calling all those fire missions instead of Lieutenant Bartz. So even though Lieutenant Bartz, if you look online, he gets a lot of credit, he actually really didn't do anything. So it's really Sergeant Frank Dinas who gets most of the credit for that, defending that part of the hill. What they used was the radios that the FOs used specifically were 100 pounds each. So they had a 50-pound battery pack, and they were very short on batteries because they were calling so many fire missions over the next 6 days. Their batteries life, they would ended up running out of life really quickly. So they had to innovate, and what they ended up doing was to recharge their batteries, because they couldn't really get new ones, is they would let their battery packs sit in the sun for a little bit, and when they sit in the sun, if they let it sit in the sun for about an hour, that would give them about 5 to 7 minutes of radio lifetime. So very crucial. And the antennas were about 15 feet of antennas, and the guns they were calling into were 105 millimeter howitzers, which the Army still uses today. They were about a couple miles back from Mortain, and over the duration of the operation, between the two FO teams, they called about 100. They called 193 fire missions. So that's about one fire mission for every 15 minutes over those 6 days, which is, you basically have no rest essentially, right? So these guys were working really hard. By day 3 of the operation, 2nd Battalion lost about 50% of their forces, and on that day, a German soldier came up to the hill and he waved a white flag, basically saying, "Hey, if you guys surrender now, we'll let you go. But if you don't surrender now, we're basically going to kill the crap out of you," is what they're saying to the Americans. The commanding officer on here, Captain Curley, went up to that soldier and basically told him to go F off. We're going to stay here no matter what. So that just kind of shows the determination that the Americans had, and fighting, till the last man, right? And more going into that determination the Americans had, they got into many hand-to-hand combat fights with the Germans, because the Germans would try to run up and get to their positions, but the Allies were able to hold them off. They were getting very short on medical supplies. Was a huge issue that they had, because they were taking so many casualties. They didn't have enough medical supplies originally with them, so what they ended up doing was, back at the howitzers, they ended up stuffing whatever medical supplies they could into the shells and tried to fire those onto the hill so that the Americans could get to it and pull out whatever they could. It sort of worked. Most of the medical supplies got smashed. However, they were able to get things like bandages and morphine, so the medics could treat the wounded on this hill and keep them alive. They were also short on food supplies as well, so what they ended up doing, I don't know where they are exactly, but there's somewhere off this hill, there's some farmhouses, and the Americans would go to those farmhouses and just try to, there was a well there that they would be able to refill their canteens with, and then they tried to find whatever food they could over there. Even though that there were Germans present in the area, they still were able to go down and get food and water. Eventually, right on August 12th, the Germans realized that they weren't going to be able to break through this hill, and they ended up retreating. And at that time as well, aircraft support came in for the Americans and were able to wipe out the German panzer divisions. That concludes my brief. Are there any questions?